Hello, I'm Peter Towers, Managing Director of ESS Small Business and ESS BIZTOOLS. Welcome to Empowering SMEs. And today we're continuing on our theme of COVID-19 coronavirus survival panel, whereby we present to you our suggestions on ways that small businesses and medium-sized enterprises might be able to work to survive during this difficult process. Last week, I made the key presentation in our webinar, and I used as my theme the presentation that Andrew Geddes, former chair of Green Cross Limited, a top 200 ASX company, had made to the accountants equivalent series of webinars that we're presenting. And Andrew spoke about preparing for the end of the lockdown. I've made some edits to Andrew's material with his permission, and I'd just like to share some of those thoughts with you today, because that is the prime material we've included in Empowering SMEs. Incidentally, you can obtain a link to the webinar recording from last week's webinar by going to the email that we sent Empowering SMEs to you and clicking on the area that indicates that you would like to access the link to the webinar recording. And I really do believe that the revised version that I was able to present will give you some significant insights as to what you can be doing now to make sure your business is going to be ready to surf through the challenges that we're all going to have as our marketplaces are opened up again. And that's what you want to do, don't you? You want to surf on top of the wave and go on to have a very successful and productive business that's successful for you as the operator and successful for your team members. But very quickly, some of the key items that I discussed last week based on what Andrew Geddes had to say. Communications within businesses is very important. Customers, have you contacted them and had a discussion with them to ascertain what they're doing? Perhaps it's a time for doing some extra training. Have you looked at the government assistance that's available through the various programs? Do you engage apprentices or trainees? If so, have you applied for the apprentice or trainee subsidy? Have you registered for JobKeeper yet? That is, if you qualify, 30% drop in turnover. If you don't quite fit the model that the government originally talked about, remember that the tax commissioner has now issued 7 alternative tests that can be utilised to determine whether a business qualifies. And if you want to go back and look at the copy of the article we sent you last week on Empowering SMEs, we've included full details of the alternative tests that the tax department are going to utilise. Cash flow. Very, very, very important. Good idea to have a look at how your cash flow is going. How's it likely to go for the next 6 months? What would happen if turnover dropped 10, 20 or 30%? Perhaps that highlights, even if you originally weren't interested, that you should be talking to your bank about trying to access one of the coronavirus SME guarantee loans, which is from money that the Reserve Bank's made available to the banking system at very low interest rates to lend to SMEs, businesses with turnovers under $50 million. For 3 years, maximum loan $250,000, low interest rates, no security for working capital purposes. Perhaps you'll find when you do your analysis, you might need to have that as a standby fund. And then you could start thinking about how you could put that money to good effect. And we talked about last week how that might be. This was based on actual case notes that Andrew Geddes had of what some of the accountancy firms that he is the chair of have in fact already implemented to utilize that money. Your senior leadership team is very important at any stage in a business, but they're really, really very important at present to be helping your team through this whole process, but giving you some advice if you're the owner or manager of your business. The other big thing to remember is if you are leasing your premises and if you would qualify for JobKeeper, you need to proceed to get yourselves registered for JobKeeper, even if you do not intend to claim the $1,500 per fortnight for your employees. But if you wish to avail yourself of the Commercial Tenants Code of Conduct, you need to have been eligible for JobKeeper. And that allows you to negotiate rental waivers and rent deferrals, very important. And that legislation has now been implemented with some slight variations from state to state and territory to territory all around Australia. The other big thing we talked about was your funding planning. When you've looked at it, the $250,000 that's coming from those special loans that I just referred to, and the borrowings that you already have or that you're prepared to borrow might not be quite enough. Perhaps you should be thinking about trying to raise capital, utilising either Section 708 of the Corporations Act or crowdsource funding equity raising. Talk to your accountants about that. If you want to talk to someone else, you're most welcome to give me a ring, 1-800-232-088. We also talked about the identification of 3 projects or ideas each quarter, and then having a few of your team come together to research those ideas, those projects, and decide whether they should be implemented into your strategic plan. Why not start that if you're not already doing it within your firm? We also talked about the importance of having business review meetings every month, preferably with your accountant there. Give your accountant the job of organising them so that the accountant can start acting as your chief financial officer. And if that won't work out for some reason, your accountant's too busy or not interested in doing that, contact me and I will introduce you to another accountant around Australia that can offer that service for you. Because it's very important that you really gear up on this sort of approach from now on. This is not going to be the same trading environment that what was happening prior to this. Already some businesses were in strife in January and February of this year. We might have forgotten about that a bit. We'd been through a massive drought, bushfires, floods and cyclones in some parts of Northern Australia. And the market was a little bit wobbly in small business and medium-sized enterprises. So part of the strategy to make sure that you do not get caught like that again or go into that sort of area is to make sure that you have a business meeting once a month that's not to discuss taxation issues, that's there to really review where you're going, to set strategies, to implement strategies, to help on the scaling up of the business, looking how you might be able to grow the business in a responsible manner so that you're all quite happy and you get some real joy out of the business. Our keynote presenters in our presentations on Wednesday, the 13th of May, are Trent Butler, a young accounting consultant who's working with young accountants who have gone out into practice primarily in Sydney, but in other parts of Australia. And he's quite happy to talk to you about how you can better utilise accountancy services. So there's a whole new generation of accountants coming along who are very much aware of technology and social media, and Trent's acting as a consultant for them. And he'd like to communicate with you as small, medium-sized enterprises to show you what those people can do for you. So that's next Wednesday. And he's going to be joined by Ashley Evans, who's the Managing Director of AAA Financial Services. Ashley's a former senior bank manager. His partner in the business is a former senior bank manager, and all but one of their team are all ex-bankers. And what they do is help businesses arrange their business finance, whether it's leases, hire purchase, loans, debtors financing, stock financing. So I hope you'll find him interesting when he talks about how you should be dealing with banks at this stage. And obviously he'll talk about the COVID-19 coronavirus loans as well. But generally, Ash will be able to give you an insight into how banks are thinking these days and how you can maximize your chances of being able to successfully deal with them. So that webinar is on Wednesday, the 13th of May at 12 noon AEST. To register, please go to www.ess smallbusiness.com.au/webinars. I look forward to talking to you then. Stay safe, look after yourself, and have a great day. Goodbye.